Welcome to Smart Citytech Week 2021. This is Venturous' flagship annual event talking about deep tech and smart cities. I am Benson Tam, founder and chairman of Venturous Group, China's first Citytech group. China is already the leader in smart cities. You may not know it, but it is already a $4 trillion market, because 800 cities in China are all upgrading to smart cities. We at Venturous Group are an investor, a business builder, and an operator using deep tech to make cities smarter. And we aim to capture this big market by making city living much, much better. Well, as they say, thank God it's Friday, and today the topic is investing in smart cities. The session will start with a presentation by our speaker, Jasmine, followed by a fireside chat between myself, Jasmine, and Marcus. So let me start by introducing today's speaker and panelists. First of all, hello, Jasmine.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yeah, so Jasmine is the investment strategist in Asia of RBC Wealth Management. So she's an expert in smart cities. Jasmine, please introduce yourself to us.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jasmine, investment strategist of RBC Wealth Management Asia. RBC Wealth Management is the world's 5th largest wealth manager by assets. And in Asia, we serve our clients, our high net worth and ultra high net worth clients through our Hong Kong and Singapore offices, and we provide them with a full range of wealth management solutions.
Thank you, Jasmine. So with that, I will then also introduce Marcus Thompson, who is the chairman of HPEF Capital Partners and a very good and old friend of mine. We have known each other for many centuries, right, Marcus? So with that, Marcus, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you, Benson, and hello, everyone. It's great to be on this panel this afternoon to talk about investment in smart cities. As Benson alluded to, we've known each other for a while. I've been living in Hong Kong for almost 30 years, since the early 90s, and which is when I met Benson in Hong Kong. I'm currently chairman of HPEF Capital Partners. Formerly, we were part of HSBC. We were the Asian private equity arm of HSBC. We were spun off in 2010. During that time, we've invested in China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Korea, Southeast Asia, in the region across different types of investment, growth capital, buyouts, and even some tech. I have to defer to Benson, really. He's been much more focused on venture investing. We've been more of a generalist. Anyway, it's great to be on this panel today, and thank you for the opportunity.
Well, Marcus, as always, humble, overly humble. And I always say that Marcus is probably the pioneer #1 private equity investor in Asia, the best kept secret. Well, anyway, let's turn to Jasmine and let her start her speech today. Without further ado, Jasmine, you're going to tell us about smart city tech investing. Over to you.
Thank you, Benson. And thank you, Venturous, for inviting us to present today. Thank you all for joining today's session. In the past 4 days, you have learned a lot about smart computing, smart building, smart city management, and smart energy. And we have seen all these incredible technologies and companies. And you may wonder, how can we as investors to participate and invest in this smart city development process? So today's session is to provide you answers to that question. And we have 4 key messages today. On next page, First of all, before talking about smart city tech investing, we have to define what is a smart city. And I will give you some examples of the smart city solutions. Also, we noticed there are some interesting distinctions in terms of smart city process in the West and in the East. And I will also briefly touch on that. And the third key message is the enabling technologies and related industries involved. And last but not least, I will address the challenges nowadays that we are still facing to achieve smart city status. So first of all, what is a smart city? Next page, please. So we have to first think about what is a smart city. And in reality, actually, there is no standardized definition of a smart city. And definitions and scopes of smart city from country to country. And next page. The reason is that the smart city development process is highly customized because each city has very different culture and needs. Smart city development has to take into account of a city's unique requirement and to align with the goals of its leaders and citizens. For example, many of the big cities nowadays are faced with the problem of traffic congestion. So for Hangzhou, a first-tier city in eastern China, smart city projects started by solving the traffic congestion issue. However, for some cities with beautiful beaches and nice resorts like Phuket in Thailand, smart city initiatives mainly focus on sustainable and smart tourism projects. And broadly speaking, we think a smart city uses technology to solve all the pain points of city development. And the key goal is to improve urban management, to make sure the citizens are living a better quality of life, and to achieve sustainable growth of the city. And on next page, we can see the smart city solutions covers very wide range of uses and services. For example, they can offer us effective transportation network or offer more efficient lighting and heating of buildings. And they can also offer less wasteful water supply or just-in-time waste collection management. They can also improve our urban safety through the predictive policing. And some of the solutions may sound a bit futuristic. However, in reality, many of the cities we live in nowadays have implemented some of these solutions. For example, ride-hailing, water leakage detection, and during the pandemic, many cities have launched the health QR code to conduct disease surveillance. So I would say when we look into all these smart city tech investment opportunities, we can start with paying attention to our daily life to see what changes have happened in the past few years and what technologies have made our life easier and better. And then on next page, I'm going to tell you some interesting different features of smart city development in the West and in the East. Next page, please. In the West, especially in Europe, there are many old cities with this legacy infrastructure systems coming from hundreds of years ago. However, many of these cities started the adoption of a sustainable and environmental friendly agenda very early. And And the major focus is on public transport and urban infrastructure. For example, in Europe, a key project is to combine all the different modes of public transport to create a seamless travel experience. And also in the West, the smart city process is mainly bottom-up, with the private sector and citizens actively engaging in designing all these projects. For example, in 2018, the Canadian government encouraged around 200 communities across the country to participate in a competition in which the citizens need to think about how to use technologies to improve their quality of life. And in the East, the smart city development process started a bit later. However, because we are experiencing urbanization and digitalization simultaneously, the Asian countries are catching up very quickly in terms of smart city development. And sometimes it's easier for newer cities to adopt all these smart solutions. For example, in China, we have this Xiong'an new area that are newly established in year 2017 in Hebei province. So during the city's design process, it is able to incorporate all this latest technology and smart solutions in the city development process from day one. And in the East, the smart city process is actually top-down, with the governments coming up with policies and providing fundings. The focus tends to be on infrastructure and to improve urban governance capability. And I remember discussing this with my colleagues in the UK, and one of them said it's really hard to believe that London is one of the leading smart cities in the world because they are still using the sewer systems from the 19th century. So to some extent, sometimes it's easier for us in Asia to notice the development of smart city because we can witness all this new infrastructure being built. However, on next page, we can see that Europe is still leading in smart city development. Asian countries are catching up very quickly, and China is now one of the leading smart city markets in the world. And there are around 800 smart city pilot programs underway or are in the planning stages. So next page, please. And a wide range of enabling technologies are needed to bring all these smart city solutions into reality. On the next page, we can see that we think at the core of smart city is 5G. We all know that it has very low latency and the speed is up to 10 times faster than 4G. And more importantly, it allows millions of Internet of Things devices to be connected in a 1 kilometer square area. However, 4G only allows a limited number of connections. And there are also a number of technologies linked to 5G that are needed to achieve advanced smart city status. And we can simply call them ABCDE, which are artificial intelligence, blockchain, cloud computing, big data, and edge computing. For example, a city installs a large number of IoT sensors in order to detect traffic conditions. And once installed, the data are transferred through the 5G network. And blockchain technology can provide secure data transmission during this process. And then our traffic authorities can leverage edge computing to analyze the data in real time, and AI can efficiently sift through the large quantity of big data to predict traffic flows and to find practical solutions to congestion, such as diverting traffic and altering traffic light sequences. And the data set is then stored on a secure cloud for future references and analysis. And on next page, we can tell that from this example, there are a large number of players involved to bring all this into reality. We have 4G and 5G services provided to transmit the data collected by sensors. And we have communication infrastructure, such as data center and telecom towers. We also need the participation of semiconductor manufacturers to make the sensor to collect data. And we also need the software companies to manage all these devices and to provide smart solutions. And cloud storage companies are also very important to store all this big data. And the cybersecurity companies would protect the systems from hackers and attacks throughout all this process. And besides from the enabling technologies and fundamental infrastructure, other technologies are also very crucial to smart city development. And at the very beginning, we have mentioned a goal of smart city development is to achieve sustainable development of a city. And at RBC Wealth Management, we initiated a term called Citytech, which is the combination of sustainability and technology. And we believe that technology that can mitigate the sustainable challenges are likely to see long-lasting waves of growth. So next page, please. And the first Citytech area we think that is very important to smart city development is green tech, to reduce carbon emission and to shift to cleaner energy. And this has been a very hot topic this year. However, we believe that we are just at the beginning stage of a multi-year energy transition cycle. According to International Renewable Energy Agency, in the next 30 years, around 110 trillion US dollar will need to be invested to realize global energy transition. And that is to say, within the next few decades, the way that energy is produced, stored, transmitted, and consumed will all need to be changed. So besides from the very hot sectors such as electric vehicles and renewable energy, there are many players along the supply chain that we can look into. And on next page, the second important Citytech area we think is health tech, how to use technology to significantly reduce the cost and improve efficiency of our healthcare services. Since the pandemic, I'm sure many of us are start to get used to seeing a doctor on the internet. And now we also have all these wearables that can collect our health data in real time. And in the future, these wearables and also medical devices will not only be able to collect our health data, but also to analyze the data in real time and to provide us with a suggested optical actions that we can take immediately. And also in the future, we will be able to see more and more AI-enabled drug discovery. With the help of AI, the drug R&D process will be able to shorten, and the R&D cost will be much lower, and the success rate is likely to be much higher. So according to our RBC Capital Market Analyst estimate, the digital health market size was around 27 billion back in year 2020. However, in only 5 years' time, the market will grow to above 90 billion US dollars. And this represents more than 25% growth rate annually. And that is to say, we are going to see very robust growth across all the segments we just mentioned. And on next page, fintech. In a smart city, people will use more and more digital payment, and we need the help of the fintech companies. However, the fintech companies not only help us to make our payment faster and safer, they will also help to empower the unbanked population who didn't have access to traditional banking services. Currently, around a quarter of the world's adult population are still unbanked, and many of them are in the emerging markets. So with the help of fintech, these people are now able to conduct low-fee digital cash transfer. They will have access to credit, insurance, and investment. So we think in the future, financial inclusion is a very powerful force to help these people to gain control over their income and to foster startup business, and ultimately to make our economic growth more sustainable. And on the last page, and the last area of Citytech I want to mention is agri-tech and food tech. So one of the biggest challenges the cities and the world are now facing is the booming population. It's estimated that in the next 40 years, the world's population will grow by another 2 billion. So how to feed all these people becomes a real challenge. And agri-tech and food tech can help us to solve some of this problem, to deliver more food with less resources. And right now, we can use technology to increase the use of our existing farmlands. And also, we are now able to farm inside a city with the help of vertical farming. And we can control some of the critical environmental factors in the farm, such as lighting, temperature, and humidity. And also, we can improve our supply chain efficiencies by making the farm-to-table process shorter so that we can reduce waste during the process. And last but not least, we are seeing more and more this alternative protein products that can replicate our meat products. So we think all this incredible technology innovation can really help us solve the pain points of city development and to make our city smarter and more sustainable. However, there are still some challenges that we are facing nowadays to achieve smart city status. Next page, please. Next page, please. So legacy cities and a very large population is a big hurdle because it's usually easier to start from a relatively blank page. And also, it would be easier for smaller cities to adopt some of these smart solutions. And another challenge is that nowadays the data collected belongs to different systems, different government departments, and different companies. And some of these companies are even competing with each other. And so how to form a cohesive network is a big challenge to us. And I'm sure many of us have this experience traveling across the border during the pandemic. We have to fill in so many different forms declaring about our health condition. And most of the times we're just repeatedly filling in the same information, such as whether you are vaccinated and where you have been in the past 14 days. But because all these forms and this data belong to different departments, we have to fill in again and again. And the third challenge is the lack of long-term planning. Many cities does not take into account of the management costs when they adopt all these smart solutions. And they also don't anticipate how their needs may change over time. And last but not least, data breaches and mishandling of private data is always a concern. So how to build up the trust between citizens and the data collector, and how to safeguard our privacy is also very critical to smart city development nowadays. And with that, I will end my presentation here, and I will pass the time back to Benson. Thank you very much.
Well, Jasmine, thank you very much. I know it's very difficult to cover so many things. Let's have a conversation about your speech. So Jasmine, you talked about a lot of areas that we can invest in. If I ask you to pick one area, which one would you pick of all the things that you talked about just now?
When it comes to investing, I always encourage investors to look into those areas that they are familiar with and they are easy to analyze. So I would say one area that investors can really look into is the EV sector. I know it has been a very hot topic this year, but because we can all touch it and feel it, and I'm sure many of the investors themselves are car fans. So it's relatively easy for them to understand and analyze the market. And also, I think there are three key reasons driving the EV sector, renewable energy sector right now. And first of all is the government policy. We have all this latest policy coming out from different governments to support the EV sector. And right now there are 24, 25 countries, they have proposed some forms of zero emission vehicle targets. And for example, the UK will ban the sale of new petrol and diesel cars from year 2030. And in the US, we have President Biden's infrastructure plan, which will, part of it will be used to build more public charging stations. So these are all very supportive policy. And also another point I want to mention is that we are actually seeing a tipping point of EV right now. And we all know that battery cost is a very large part of the electric vehicles, and they can account to 30 to 40% of the cost of an EV. And in the past decades, the battery costs have come down by 85%, and they continue to fall further. So it's estimated that EV can become more competitive, more cost competitive compared with traditional cars when the battery cost comes to $100 per kilowatt hour, and which is estimated that that can be achieved in year 2023. And some producers said they are already able to achieve that cost. So we think the battery technology is really the key to the uptake of the EVs. But I also know that the sector has gone up quite a lot, and valuations of some of the companies has gone up to the roof. But I would say that next year, what we need to see is whether this EV companies, especially some of the startups, whether they can deliver all these promised sales targets, and whether they can prove they can have a recurring revenue. And also along the sectors, there are many parts suppliers, manufacturers, software providers that most investors haven't looked into. And I think that presents us some opportunities next year.
So I'll switch to another topic. Last question to you before we get Marcus on. So Jasmine, as an individual, what is your wish list, your 3 wish list that the smart city should be able to deliver to you as a person, as somebody living inside the city? What is the dream 3 wishes for you?
I would say a key wish is to save my time, because nowadays we are wasting so many time waiting for buses and queuing in line and waiting to get healthcare services. So I would say my biggest wishes for smart cities to all of us is really to save time. And I remember there is research saying that in the future smart city, all these applications will be able to save each citizen more than 112 hours per year. So that is more than 5 days each year, and that will be able to give back to all the citizens to enjoy our lives. So that will be my biggest wish.
Okay. Any other wishes? Or should I ask Marcus? Why don't I ask Marcus? Marcus, what is your wish for a smart city?
I think a lot of it is improvement at the edges in terms of, firstly, it's understanding how much energy we consume. Right now, we've taken electricity for granted, or gas, whatever your energy supply is. And we just turn it on and there's nothing to really monitor other than, you come in, switch on the lights, switch off the lights, but that's pretty much it. And going forward, I think we all want to know, we're all becoming more conscious about how much energy we're using. And we want to understand that in more granular detail so we can fine tune our consumption patterns. So that's one of my wishes. There are, many others, of course, too.
So I would
like an EV too. That's EVs too.
That's great. So basically, Jasmine, your wish is you want time. You must be very, very overworked. So Marcus, you want green. That's great. That's great. What do I want out of a smart city? Good question. What do I want? Well, again, just to be completely out of the box, I want to live with neighbors again. We live in a big city like Hong Kong. We don't even know our neighbors, even next doors. I think in the new smart cities, it's not just technology. It is going to be green, very green, just like what you said, Marcus. I sometimes think it's like a Singapore. I also think that it's going to be very social. No longer do we need to be just on the phone and look at virtual friends. Instead, we'll have real friends around us, literally living in a community around us, and that we are much more connected to them. Yeah, maybe that's what I want. I want, neighbors again. Again, very off the, very, very out of the box. Now, there's the 3 of us, and let's have a bit of fun. Today is Friday. So Marcus, what do you want to ask Jasmine or me about smart cities?
Okay, well, Jasmine, I have a question for you. You're at the coalface with your clients and seeing, what they do. Where the dollars flowing to at the moment? I guess, I suppose the reason for asking this is that, is that Benjamin Graham saying, the stock market is a voting machine in the short term and a weighing machine in the long term. And, you can play that game in 2 ways. If you get in early, the voting machine can be very lucrative, but ultimately, I guess if you're a long-term investor, you're looking at the weighing machine. So, where is the money? You mentioned EVs. Obviously, there's a lot of money flowing into EVs at the moment. I noticed that. Been a lot of coverage about that. But apart from EVs, where else are you seeing money flow to?
Yeah, another key areas we're seeing clients' interest is on the health tech area. And I think the reason is during the pandemic is really a tipping point to let us realize and to realize the importance of our health, and to gradually to accept seeing a doctor through a video conferencing system. And so I would say really people do investment based on their life experience. So right now they are able to experience all this telehealth technologies in real life. So they are more interested to look into and to analysis and to invest in.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think there's a lot of opportunity in that space, bringing technology into the picture. A lot of medical practices work in kind of manual systems still.
So, Marcus, I grant you one wish. You can ask me a question.
Okay, no, Benson, thank you. I've been dying to do this.
Okay, sure.
I guess, I think the smart city investment opportunity is very exciting. I mean, we've learned about it during this week, and Jasmine, you've painted a very comprehensive picture today of the different areas for it. But Benson, I guess how do we compare this opportunity to, say, other big investment opportunities that we've seen in the last 20 years? For example, the emergence of the internet in the late 1990s, and then in the thousands, the emergence of China's middle class and the expansion of the middle class. What are the similarities and what are the differences that you see between this upcoming investment opportunity and those that we've kind of lived through, and in some cases we've made money from, others maybe we haven't made so much money from in the past?
I like that question a lot, Marcus, because especially the one about comparing this to the internet emergence, let's say in the 1999, 2000 era, okay? Because I think the good thing is that we all sort of lived through that. I certainly lived through that through the lens of China and Beijing, because I moved to Beijing in 2002, right at the beginning of the China internet boom. And you saw that too. So I would use that as a example to demonstrate what I think is the smart city. I would actually use another one, an earlier one, 20 years before that. If you wind back the clock, so today we wind back the clock 20 years, you go back to the start of the internet, year 2000. You then wind back the clock another 20 years, around 1980 is the emergence of Shenzhen, okay? Now, the reason I say that is that I thought long and hard about this, and I think there are a lot of similarities with both those things. First of all, there was a lot of controversy, very polarized views. Internet is a scam. Internet is the best thing since sliced bread. Shenzhen, over my dead body. Shenzhen, the future, okay? So at the point of about 99, it's very polarized. And we are seeing exactly that on smart cities. When I go out to see people, it's like that. I think it is very classic in the sense that this is emergence, true innovation of something completely new. And perhaps as a VC, I always say that most people make the mistake of making decisions based on experience, facts, and logic. Guess what? All three is backwards looking, okay? Which means that it is completely useless when you try to look ahead when there is an emergence of something truly new, not somewhat new, but truly new. Okay, so Shenzhen was that moment in time, and internet was that moment in time. And so I think the challenge in those times for myself, for example, in Shenzhen, I completely missed that. Yeah, well, I'm not even there, right? You know, I was in the UK. The year 2000, the internet, I learned from a mistake, and I moved to Beijing, and I say, I choose to believe that it will come. And I choose to believe that despite there is no facts, I believe that the direction absolutely must be right. How can you have a, you know, second, third, fourth biggest economy in the world with no IT? It's impossible. And yet I have no facts to prove it to you. But that's the true sign of emergence, okay? That's number one. Number two is that another, I would say, critical word I would use is, I think we are coming to another Big Bang moment. And the last two were clearly also Big Bang moments. You know, Shenzhen not only created a new city, it created a whole new China. It changed the rules completely on everything. And it was leading the way. In the case of internet, it was the same. People were polarized because they can't use experience. So in a sense, they need to invent a new vocabulary, a new perspective, and perhaps a whole new logic to what works and what doesn't. And that's what I find very, very interesting, challenging, but also extremely exciting. The reason is that if I look back on my venture capital days for all these 2 decades, the first one was the first generation, as I said, was the internet. That turned out to be the first generation internet, PC internet. The second generation internet was the mobile internet. Okay, and I think that what we're seeing now in the Big Bang moment is the third generation, the city internet. And now, the reason I say that is that you need to forget all your experience and start from scratch using Elon Musk's words, start from first principle and derive the new solutions, because in these moments when new things come, it's almost like you used to have 3 simultaneous equations. So you used to have certain solutions. Now you have 1 extra one, and everything changed. Linear dynamics became sort of non-linear. Feedback loops became convoluted complexities, and so on. And so that's why the biggest challenge is human beings are wired to use experience. For survival, we use it all the time because we said it worked all the time. How can I do the opposite now? Now, that is why it is very counterintuitive at the point of the Big Bang. And so that's in a sense why it took, I think a lot of people are also finding that. And so that's why I would call it, as I say, the polarization of opinions and the Big Bang moment. And remember not to use backward-looking experience, facts, or logic. It doesn't mean that you're going to go crazy and not think and be irrational. That's not true. You can still look at directionally how that is. So that's why I like your question a lot, Marcus, because I think the way to find these very exciting opportunities, and again, I quote from Elon Musk. Elon Musk said, the biggest opportunities are the ones that is a truth, and yet nobody on earth yet recognize it's the truth. So that there is a big arbitrage in terms of cognition, so that everybody misprices it, everybody is looking in the wrong direction, and you alone can see it. And so that's why I say that smart city is one of those moments. And that's why, for me, in a sense, I came out of hiding to do this, because I think this is not just going to be a huge, 4 trillion market opportunity, but this is going to be, in a sense, I like to say, I'm building the city of the future for my daughter. I truly wish in 20 years, I would have made a little impact into making the cities a little bit better for her, a little bit more green, and saving her a bit more time so she can do whatever she likes. Yeah. So sorry, long answer to a short question, Marcus.
No, but it's interesting, Benson, that you comment on Elon Musk, and I mean, if I think about the internet era,
yes.
The emergence of a number of really big entrepreneurs, Steve Jobs being one, Jeff Bezos, and in China, Jack Ma, Pony Ma. I guess in periods of change, you're right. We can't rely so much on experience. We really are looking for someone with passion and vision, and to kind of follow their track. So I suppose when we're looking at smart cities in the future, we're going to be looking for the entrepreneurs of tomorrow. I mean, Elon Musk is clearly, he's there already. No debate about that. But there will presumably be others emerging in the next 5 or 10 years.
And on that, I built on what you said, Marcus. I remember those days when we were looking at e-commerce. Some people were saying, no, it's not going to work. Import-export is so entrenched. The intermediary have all the relationships and connections. They will never let go, and therefore, forget it. But I think, guess what? It happened. And e-commerce looks nothing like the old import-export offices that you used to see. It's completely different. So what you said is true. Now, I also use another analogy, which is to say, in a moment of change, I would say a big evolutionary change, almost like when dinosaurs died off and human beings, arose on Earth. That is a big sort of Big Bang moment, right? I made a funny statement and people resonated a lot. I said, dinosaurs are not killed off by other dinosaurs. It is killed off by something that is completely different, which is human beings, okay? Size is different, DNA is different, everything is different. The way they work, live, and play is different. Now, the same is true, which is why it took me, in a sense, so long, even though I've seen and I think I know that this smart city is going to be huge. What will be the new species that will win in this new post-Big Bang era, where the new simultaneous equations are data, complexity, and a lot of feedback loops? And what is it going to be? And so, in a sense, after leaving my previous employer, I basically said, blow up my road behind me. Whatever I've done in the last, God knows how many decades, that's the one thing I should never do, because that's the dinosaur. And I'm trying to find the new human being. And I have to I still use, there's still rationality. But additional to all of that, you need to, in a sense, forget about everything that you knew, blow them all up, and using all the basic building blocks, using rationality, rebuild a completely new solution so that the new species and human beings, and initially it looks very, very strange because you're so used to seeing the previous things. So it's like, yeah, so sorry, I'm yakking on, sorry about that. But it's just, I thought so much about it. And that's also why for us, we take our time and we do things in a certain way that looks nothing like the before. As I said, for us, Venturous Group is business not as usual. Because if it's business as usual, I would say 99% of the time, it's wrong. It is the old age, not the new age. Yeah. So thank you for asking that question and let me yak on. Great. So, Jasmine, your turn to ask Marcus and me.
I actually have a question for both of you because you are all very seasoned investors in the Chinese tech area. So I'm sure you have all witnessed the change of the technology involvement. And my question is, in the past 2 years, I'm sure many changes have happened. So do you witness any changes of the technology adoption, like the priority change or the focus investment areas change? And how do you adapt to all these changes and challenges?
Can you ask the question again, a little bit simpler? I'm just thinking aloud.
Yeah, so basically, I'm sure the pandemic has changed many things. The ordinary lives are interrupted. So in terms of smart city developments, some of the areas may need to be suspended or stopped or interrupted, but other areas may grow very quickly. So so in terms of your investment, do you adjust according to these changes, and what changes you have witnessed in the past 2 years in your investment in the Chinese tech area?
Marcus, you want to go first?
Okay, well, I mean, Jasmine, I'm not going to answer the question head on here because we haven't been so active in China tech the last couple of years. So, but what I do think looking forward is, you mentioned when we talked about EVs, the importance of government set targets in terms of triggering changes in behavior and adoption of EV cars. And I think that is one significant change that we, from the past, and Benson talked about blowing up the past because the past is, if you believe that too closely, you get yourself into trouble. So we've heard a lot about common prosperity in China, and we're also wondering what that really means. But I think the way I see investment moving forward is that whereas there's been a shift towards what used to be, you could describe as individual success. So where people have individually done extremely well, measured on their stock price, their wealth, what have you, to goals where you're bringing in sort of community success. So where there is participation from government, because they will be setting a lot of the standards that will create the adoption of more sustainable behavior and green adoption. So I think that is one shift in thinking. Historically we've looked at kind of individual success. Now we've got to look at companies and individuals who actually are going to measure themselves in terms of community success and achieving objectives.
Great. My turn?
Yeah.
Please.
This whole crisis of COVID is a huge buying opportunity. Everything, all the best assets are going for half price and less. People are panicking. So that's why in my past experience, when there is at the point of maximum panic and chaos, that's when you should go and buy. Again, quoting from Warren Buffett, he said, you should be greedy when everybody else is fearful, and you should be fearful when everybody is greedy. I totally agree. Being very contrarian when nobody wants it, that's the moment you want to buy. So that's why we are very, very active last year. We want to be very, very active this year and next year. Now, 3 things that I've changed. Number 1, in my portfolio, I look for hyper growth. The reason is that, don't ask me to explain because it'll take a long time. There is asset hyperinflation already. People are looking for inflation in the P&L. Nope. Look at the asset. Look at the property prices, everything. Asset hyperinflation is already starting. That's the direct problem of infinite QE. So the only countermeasure I can think of is hypergrowth. So that's all-in hypergrowth. Where do you find it? That takes me to the second one, all-in tech, because tech is the only ways that you can have asset-light, hypergrowth type network effect assets. Okay. Now, for the same reason, where do I find the best tech? I say all in China. Because I think in the world now, there's only two poles of super high tech, US and China. Whereas in US, I have no comparative advantage. My comparative advantage in the last 19 years in China is China. So that's why COVID has switched me over to all in hypergrowth, all in tech, and all in China. The whole three of them would resonate with each other. And so that's why we are doing Venturous Group to get into all of that. Yeah.
Right. I think that's really very good suggestions to all the investors here.
Yeah. Well, you know, again, me being crazy here on Friday afternoon, but I think sometimes if it provokes conversation, absolutely. Yeah. And if it provokes people and make people a little bit uncomfortable, that's exactly how you get inspired and shifting how you think about the future, right? Marcus?
Absolutely.
A little bit of a, you know, thrower of the spanner into the works. Well, we have 3 more minutes. One last thing. Anything, you know, any burning question, anything that, you know, Jasmine or Marcus, you want to raise? Any, you know, parting thoughts for people on Smart City Tech? Anything?
Well, I was waiting for Jasmine to say something. But no, I think what I would like to just say is that I think Benson, it is echoed to your point about, you know, what things are going to change. No question about it. History doesn't repeat itself exactly, but there are elements of it which reoccur. So, you know, I think one has to put on a new mindset, understand that actually the growth in this change is going to be driven more by as much by regulatory change as kind of demand. I mean, it depends on which, you know, area you're looking at. But if you're looking at, say, for example, green energy, that the power suppliers, a lot of that's going to be driven by regulation, shutting down coal-fired power stations and oil-fired power stations and so forth. Whereas in the consumer part, energy consumption is going to be more driven by human preference. We've talked about likes and dislikes, but a lot of it, again, is going to be driven regulatory, you know, EVs as well. So this is a more complex environment that we're moving into, because the pace of growth is going to be to a large extent driven by government regulations that come down, you know, banning petrol cars and so forth.
Yep. Regulation and markets will become interactive, and it will change everything. Jasmine, parting thoughts, 1 sentence. What is it?
Yeah, I just think in the past 2 years, all this special situation has forced us to think our relationship with the city and with the environment. So it's a very good time for us to adopt all these smart solutions and start from each one of us to make our life more sustainable. So it will be a great opportunity for us to look into all these companies and industries that can make these changes happen.
Great. So very ESG, right? So
Yes.
with that, I would say we conclude our 2021 Smart City Tech Week. Thank you to my dear old friend Marcus, and thank you to my latest new friend Jasmine. We had an exciting week. We started off doing smart computing. We then moved on to smart buildings, and then smart city management, and then smart energy. And today we wrapped up everything and just say, what are we really putting our dollars into? You know, what is our honest answer about all of that? I think, you know, hopefully we open a lot of food for thought for everyone. And I guess my very last sentence to all of you is live a life and be venturous. Thank you very much. This is Benson Tam from Venturous Group. From myself, and thank you to all the behind the scene production crew and my overworked staff in Hong Kong and Beijing and Singapore. As they say, have a good weekend and thank God it's Friday. Bye.
Thank you, Benson.
Thank you.